Hey, before we begin, just want to say to all the service members out there, all the veterans, all the families, we see you. Your dedication, your commitment, your hard work, and your sacrifice has not gone unnoticed. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for keeping us safe and fighting for our freedom. Happy Memorial Day. This is not about burgers or hot dogs or backyard get togethers and a long weekend. It's about you. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. With that said, let's get started. All right, let's do this. This is Haas, and this is a Desperate Spike. First of all, I want to say I am sorry for the way you're seeing things are. Moving with the family, relocating to a new office space, and it is a nightmare. And believe me, this is the clean version. But I had a really good story that I wanted to share. I often share it with friends, and I thought maybe this is a good idea for me to share it with y'all. And it just so happens that reminded me of Memorial Day and our armed veterans. So all right, let's put this guy right here. Hopefully, you don't get too distracted. All right, let's just start. So stay with me as I try to unpack some of this stuff over here. So a few years ago, I was invited, a buddy of mine were invited to go to, let's just call it a conference. Not a big one, just a small one, maybe 15 to 20 people, where they were discussing their roadmaps and their processes. And the word process is very interesting. I remember we walked in there and boy, did it feel like a firing squad. We were supposed to be there only for a couple of hours. We were supposed to explain what's agile, what's safe, scaled agile framework, and the benefit of it, and why should we use it. We were invited to explain to a bunch of people who, let's just say, they've had a very specific way of doing things for years, and they very strict, and they have a quite the regimen. And again, it felt like we're staying in front of the firing squad, to be honest with you, because personally speaking, I didn't feel that we were very welcome there by everybody. It's just a couple of people. We waited our turn, and then it was time for us to go up there and talk. Now, during that time, um, when we got up there, we had a presentation ready. What is agile? What is safe? And everything that you'd expect to see probably in an agile presentation from two agile coaches who were trying to convince you that they're the right answer and solution for what you're struggling with. And they didn't want to see any slides. They didn't care. They already knew what agile. Everybody has their own interpretation, or they've been. If you are not aware of what agile is in today's market, in today's world, you probably missed about a few years. And we're here to help you get back on it. But everybody knows what agile is nowadays. So, and I think that's the attitude that we walked into. Well, when we walked in there and we started putting up some slides and data and reporting on how we can help, there was just no connection. They didn't care. They were ready to ask their questions. They wanted to know why the hell were we there? And that's when I turned to my buddy and I said, just shut it off. Let's just turn it off and let's just take some questions. And that's what we did. And there were so much questions as much as they were, what are you going to do about that kind of question? Or just gotcha questions to see if we really knew what we were talking about, to see if we're full of shit or not. And we had this one gentleman who said, and I love this story. This is one of my favorite stories, by the way. I don't know how true this statement is, and I probably should have done some research on it. My apologies for not doing so. But I remember him saying, the the Navy, or was it the Air Force? Some armed forces, when they created the stealth bomber back in the 60s, they used Waterfall. And they had a budget, they had a time frame, they had quality checkpoints, and they delivered the stealth bomber on time, on budget, and with quality. And they've used Waterfall. And they've never had a problem using Waterfall since then. I thought that was a really good example. I thought that was an excellent example. And I said, that really is a good example. Do you have another one for me? And he didn't. There was silence in the room for a few minutes. And the silence, okay, it was more like 10 seconds, but it felt like minutes to me, to be honest with you, because I wanted to really hear if there was another example. Now, I've given them examples how Agile works and how SAFe works, just for my own personal experience, but also out there in the real world outside of us. And where this goes, we'll figure it out later. And they didn't have an answer. There was laughter at the end of that silence, though, because in reality, it kind of proved my point. Number one, any framework will work. Any framework will work if you use it correctly. Number two, my second point was you just gave me one case to prove your point. Give me more. I'm asking for more. Now, I understand that I'm an agile guy, that I'm a SAFe guy. Therefore, I'm always going to promote agile and SAFe. But I've learned in the last few years that if you're not able to pivot, if you're not able to be flexible, no framework will work. Because at the end of the day, a framework is supposed to work for you, not the other way around. So that's my story. All I can tell you, by the end of that 2 hours, we were asked to come back the next day and stay there for the remainder of the week. As a matter of fact, there was this one gentleman who I always remember when I first walked in there. He just had his arms crossed looking at us. He jumped in with a few questions himself to ask us if we really knew what we're talking about. And what about this? And what about that? And how about this? And how about that? Hey, listen, a lot of the times when people ask questions like that means they've gone through the process, they've gone through the coaching, they've gone through the transformation. And these are the challenges that they've met that they weren't able to answer or find a solution for, or the person that was guiding them did not give them a good solution. So they're frustrated. And that man was frustrated. And I remember at the end of the conference, when we were saying goodbye to everyone, I walked up to him. He turned around and said, I have to tell you, when you first walked in here, I was not ready for you. As a matter of fact, I thought to myself, oh boy, here come the process weenies. Now, I must say, at first, I was a little offended by that comment, but what he said right after that really made me very proud of that moment, of that week, of the whole story. And that's why I share it today. He said, you completely turned my perception around about how this should be done. Long story short, and without giving too many details, my team and I ended up working with that gentleman for quite some time. And we maintain a connection till today. And he is someone that I hold in high regards and I respect very well. And that was an outcome that I always say was one of my success stories. I didn't really do a transformation of functionality or flow or anything that day. All I did was just talk to people and be real with them and tell them what I can do for them and why they should be a little more open-minded and give themselves an opportunity to succeed instead of shooting themselves in the foot. So that's my Memorial Day story. That's my story. Anyway, Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for putting up with my sarcasm and my silliness and the mess that I'm in. But this has been a Dead Sprint Spike. I'm Haas, and I hope to see you soon.